Another very important part of the program. We're going to bring our attorney up. His name is Brian Cox. Could you take just a few moments to let us know who you are?
Absolutely. And first, I want to say thank you for inviting me and the San Francisco Public Defender's Office to be in this space with all of you. It's an important part of the work that we do, not just defending people in the courtroom, but making sure that we don't have clients in the first place, right? I think the way that I see it is the best way to defend our clients is never to have them in the first place, right? And so part of my job and what I do is engaging in these public education pieces where we can try to keep folks out of the system by sharing what we know about rights. So in our office, I lead our office's integrity unit, so that's focused on police accountability. And so we engage in a lot of policy advocacy to that end, both at the Board of Supervisors and at the Police Commission, as well as at the state and the state legislature. We also assist our office in filing in the criminal litigation piece when it comes to addressing police misconduct through various motions. And we also file complaints, which I'll talk about a little bit, against police across San Francisco. And we maintain a database in our office to share that information with the public. So because we believe fundamentally that everyone has a right to know who polices them. And because of recent changes in state law, that allows us to collect these records so we can keep the public informed. So sorry, it's been a long day, and that whole yoga exercise got me super relaxed. And like, nah,
they know me.
I got to get back in my
blame it on Anthony.
No. I got to get back in my brain after, because most of what I do is look at the very worst of policing all day. So it's really it's rewarding to be in community. It's rewarding to be with all of you and get a chance to talk about these things. But so I manage our office, like I said, integrity unit. So what I wanted to do a little bit, and I know we're going to get to some question and answer, is to kind of think about how I think about these three pieces here: the stop, show, control. I don't use those words, but they have a very, very similar sort of framework. The idea is that, when you're approached by a cop, either in a traffic stop or sort of on the street, your body goes through a response. It goes through your cortisol levels spike, your anxiety is heightened, and so it requires all the techniques to calm yourself down. And so I think what I wanted to add into what's been said tonight is give yourself enough grace and self-love to understand that you are about to be triggered. You are about to go through an experience that's not going to be pleasant. Police don't interact with you because they want to be your best friend. They don't interact with you because they really want to talk about the Warriors game. They're interacting with you for a very specific reason. And that reason is because they think they have the legal basis, or they're trying to find the legal basis to either detain you, stop and question you, search you, or search your car, or ultimately arrest you. That's it. There's no other legitimate reason for them to talk with you. And so that is not an insult to them or their profession. It's just that's the dynamics of what their job is, right? They're not community social workers who are out here checking on people's welfare and actually care about your welfare. They're here for a very specific reason. So I start every talk kind of in that framework. They're not your friends. They're not here to help you. If they're interacting with you and they're trying to detain you, it's because they believe, like I said, they have some justification to either at least detain you or to take it further. So when you get pulled over or when you're having that interaction with the cop, that's the framework that I like to approach it with. This is going to be an adversarial situation. This is a chess match. They're making a move. I need to think about what my counter move is. Now that should be grounded in the practices of thinking about your breathing, about thinking about I am about to go through trauma, but you should be very clear-eyed. This is an adversarial situation. And so that's the kind of the stop piece. You're about to be stopped. Prepare yourself for that, right? The next piece is really focused on what can they make you do, right? So they ask you, show me your ID. Well, if they have a lawful basis to detain you, you're required to show your ID, right? So in California, they can't just come up to you on the street and say, show me your papers. Now we'll get to ICE in a second because it's a little bit different sometimes. But In California, unlike a lot of states, they can't just do that. They have to have a lawful reason because it is considered a search under the Fourth Amendment as interpreted by California courts for an officer to stop you and ask you for your identification. Some other states are not like that. And so we have that privilege here. And additionally, whenever an officer does stop you as a result of a traffic stop, the first thing that comes out of their mouth should be the reason why they stopped you. That was a law that passed 20...
Stop you.
Sure.
Sit down. Please. And you've got the floor.
Okay. But please shout out questions, and I can move the mic around or if folks have questions. So they have to tell you the basis of the reason for the stop. Now, if they don't do that, that doesn't make the stop illegal. That doesn't mean that they can't do anything else. An officer can violate all sorts of rights that you have, and they can still do what they want to do. So don't necessarily think that the Constitution is your shield against whatever.
Did you say that again?
I say a lot of things. You got to be more specific.
They can do it, violate your rights.
They can violate your rights and still do what they want to do. They can violate your rights and still arrest you. They can violate your rights and still beat you up. They can violate your rights and still harm you. And so it's important to think about that in the context of you know, sort of like the show and the control, right? Or as I like to say, you know, kind of be strategic and then fight back later, right? So your best battlefield is not going to be when that person has their hand on their gun. Your best battlefield is going to be when you talk to your public defender or your lawyer, and then you talk to me afterwards and we file a complaint, and we issue a press release, and we embarrass that officer and get that officer fired and decertified. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But my goal when I'm giving these talks is always I want people to survive the interaction and to fight their case and to hold the police accountable. You know, it's not just we pay their salaries so we can tell them what to do, but in a very real sense, if we don't push back against police overreach, we allow that to become the norm. We allow that to become how they operate. And, you know, and so it's our collective responsibility to resist that and to fight against it. So cop comes up to your car and show me your ID. Here's the reason for the stop. Do you mind if I search you? A lot of people think, okay, well, do you mind if I search you? That sounds kind of like an order. And sort of research shows that when a cop asks for consent to search, about 95% of the time people say yes. Now, why is that? Anybody have any ideas?
Yeah, they think they say no, it's sort of like an admission of guilt.
Yeah. And this is true even if people have contraband in their car. You've got something in your pocket, you got something in the back, people still say yes. And why? It's because the cop gets up to you, has the flashlight in your face, hand on the gun. You don't mind if I search you, do you? And when we talk about control, right, they're trying to control the environment in part because they want to get home to, and there's legitimate reason for that, but in part because they know that if they can intimidate you, they can get what they want, and they can get what they want faster. Now, again, this is not to call out any specific officer. This is to call out the institution of policing itself. Right? I am not hard on individuals, but I am hard on the institution because it's the institution that keeps black and brown people in cages and destroys communities. So I have to be hard on that. So when the cop comes to this interaction and they ask for consent to search, you always have the right to say no. And you always have the right to say, am I free to leave? So if the officer says no, again, this is chess. Now you know you're in an adversarial situation. So when I get approached by a police officer, the first thing I say is, am I free to leave? And if the answer is yes, then I don't have to leave, but I also don't have to answer their questions. I don't have to move. I don't have to do anything. I can stand in the public space and do what I'm doing. Now, there are some exceptions when there's a scene. They might ask people to move because of crowd control reasons, and they have some broad discretion. I don't want to kind of get into too much about that because it does get a little bit dicey, but in San Francisco, you have special rights whenever there is an incident to film a situation, to be observant, to record. And so if there is a question about searching, if there is a question about detention, that's always my first instinct. Am I free to leave? And so when it comes to sort of traffic stops, which are the most common way that we interact with police officers, and I've seen this play out in so many cases. I could give you guys a ton of anecdotes, but I'll just give you one to make it very, very, very clear. A client of mine was driving in the Bayview in a recently purchased white Mercedes, and it's a young black guy with dreads. And his buddies were in the car, all young people of color, right? We don't know where this is going. Everybody knows where this is going. We don't need to go through the story. But the cops follow the car, then like break off because they try to run the plates and all this other stuff, right? Again, they're looking for a reason. When cops approach you, they're looking for a reason to do something. They want to get into the car because, again, for them, this is what they think keeps the community safe. But actually what research shows and what I've observed is the things that can keep the community safe are not investments in policing. It's investments in resources for the community, right? And so this is kind of the perspective that the Public Defender's Office takes, and what I do in particular when I talk about these things is that I don't see police as actually being exceptionally helpful for those things. If we invest in housing, jobs, education, training, healthcare, those are actually going to solve the problems that create a lot of the issues that we see, right? And so they follow the car and they come up with some BS reason. Well, we ran the license plate, but the number came back as non-registered. Well, what happened was they actually entered the wrong information. And so then they get up to the front of the car, and my client sitting there is like, what are you doing? Like, y'all could have pulled the car over a long time ago, but they kept circling because they kept looking for that information, right? And so the situation escalates because my client's like upset and angry, right? Because he didn't practice all the yoga techniques, which is fair and fine. But, you know, I talked to him about it, and he said, I'm sick and tired of being harassed. I'm sick and tired of that feeling where you're not treated as a legitimate partner in this American project. And when he said that to me, I was like, I had a hard time because he's a young brother, and I wasn't expecting that to come out of his mouth. And when he did, I was like, okay, we're gonna take this case to trial. Like we're just going straight to trial. We're not even gonna accept any offer. The DA tries to dismiss the case. We're saying, no, we want a public trial because we need people to hear this and see this. And so, you know, when we talk about sort of like fighting back, your best battlefield is not in the moment. Your best battlefield is going to be when you fight the case. And so in terms of, you know, documenting the information, making a contemporaneous note, super important. Remember what you see. Remember the feelings that you felt in the moment. Remember what the officer says, because they have to give you a reason for the stop. They have to give you a reason for the search. They pull your license plate to check to see if you have warrants, right? If you have a warrant, that's it. They're going to arrest you. But they're trying to find ways to get into the car, into your bags, into the trunk, into all those different spaces. That's their job, right? That's what they're told to do. You're told to fight crime. The problem is they miss, excuse my language, a shit ton of crime, and they're focused only on one group. They have a theory about where crime comes from in San Francisco and the neighborhoods that it's generated in. And that's untethered to what the data actually suggests. And anyway, but your best battlefield is in the courtroom with your lawyer. And then after that, filing a complaint. So a couple of years ago, and it's been about 5 years in the making, my office, and I was a part of leading this campaign from our office, we helped pass a policy in San Francisco to limit pretextual stops. Some of you might have heard something about this kind of generally, but basically, we all know what a pretext stop is. It's driving while black, right? License plate is messed up, registration's out of whack. You've got prayer beads on the rearview mirror, maybe you got tinted windows. They don't really care about any of that. They don't really care about whether the stickers are stacked on top of each other. Yeah, what right? And everyone here has got a story like that. I've got tons of stories, right? And then they make you guess. And this is before it changes in state law. Why do you think I pulled you over? Would you like me to say the real answer, or? but I think the point though is, you know, they're looking to find ways to get into the car. They're looking to find ways to search. And so the point of this policy was to call out very directly the sort of racial bias that SFPD in particular has engaged in when it comes to traffic stops and the racial disparities. And so our goal was to limit the types of stops that we saw that were driving those numbers. And so right now in San Francisco, SFPD officer can't pull you over for expired registration if it's expired less than 6 months. They can't pull you over for one busted tail light. They can't pull you over if you have prayer beads or a Christmas tree air freshener or whatever on your rearview mirror, because what we saw was they were using those things to stop black and brown people. Now, next week or in a couple of weeks, they're going to present in front of the police commission about what the data looks like. And we've run some preliminary analysis to show that actually racial disparities are starting to go down with these traffic stops. So it sort of illustrates that we can actually limit the scope of policing, reduce racial disparities, and crime can go down at the same time. In other words, we can actually shrink the police footprint and still keep the community safe. So I see that as, well, I'm not sure that we actually need them to keep us safe. It feels like we can keep each other safe. So part of what I also do is that, we file complaints against officers. So this is kind of like the last piece, right? This is like choose your battlefield. The battlefield that I prefer is holding them accountable and doing it in a very public way. So that means filing complaints. That means going to the police commission saying this officer did A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And, really drawing attention to some of these issues. The campaign to end pretext stops in San Francisco only happened because community members spoke up and talked about the harms that they experienced as a result of being over-policed consistently. And so, to me, it's, I don't always take the framework of, sort of like show that level of respect. I think you have to protect your rights, but there is a piece to, this is not the best battlefield for you. The courtroom and the other pieces really are going to be the best way you protect your rights. So that's kind of my general sense of it. Happy to answer questions and talk about different ideas.
One question, in terms of, I thought, can someone find out if they do have a warrant?
Yeah.
They forgot they had, or they didn't pay a bill?
Totally. Yeah. So a great way to think through that is you can call our office, and we can find out if someone has an active warrant. You can also call the sheriff's office at Central Warrants. They can tell you if there's an active warrant. I'm not going to give legal advice. I'm a lawyer, but I'm going to give legal advice. If it were me and I were telling my family member, I would not go to the courthouse because that's another place where you can get, figure that out. I've actually had a client who went to the courthouse to figure out if they had a warrant, and then they got arrested and they became my client. And, so it's, again, I'm not dispensing legal advice on that view, but it's the safest way for you to stay in the community and keep yourself safe. You just call our office and we can direct you.
Now, would you say this is true for any city? What I would like to do is try to get some guidelines that will work in San Francisco, Nashville, Oakland, anywhere in the country.
I think that's an interesting question because not every jurisdiction, unfortunately, has a public defender's office that has that level of resource. But in general, yes, you can call your local public defender, and they can do it because they have the information that comes from the court, right? And so if there's an active warrant, they can generally find that information out. So that I would view our office as a first step in that question. Yep.
One other question I have, watching all these police video things, and that is, they always often ask, is there anything in your car that shouldn't be there? So I've wondered, is it best to, if you have something, best to say no or not say anything and let them find it, or let them know up front? From the police officer's point of view, they want to know, and I've seen them get really upset with people once they found it and they didn't tell them.
I would encourage anyone who is being detained by police, and again, not dispensing legal advice, I would encourage anyone detained by police to exercise their right to remain silent. And in this country, unfortunately, our Supreme Court tells us that you have to say that. You can't literally just stay silent. You have to actively say, I am exercising my right to remain silent.
But what I've found is that they would get a dog.
Yep.
And then
Let 'em
they
get a
go,
dog.
and if the dog makes a hit,
Yep.
then they're pretty free to do what they want to do.
Yeah. So if they're, again, the purpose of why a police officer is interacting with you is not to be your buddy. They're looking for something, right? And so if they're going to get a dog, they're going to get a dog. If they're going to call for backup, they're going to call for backup. But exercising your right to remain silent best protects your criminal case, because a lot of people, their instinct is, I can explain my way out of this. And I cannot tell you how many cases I've seen with my clients or their clients, where they think they can talk the way out of it. And I'm just like, all you're doing is helping the DA win their case. Because all you're doing is telling them, well, you know, it's not mine, it's my buddy's, or maybe I don't know, how did that get there? Oops, sorry, you know, all these things. No, if there is an issue where someone is afraid there's something in my car, exercise your right to remain silent. If you are being arrested, exercise your right to remain silent. And again, that's why I go through that analysis of, am I being detained? Yes or no? If I'm not being detained, then another way of asking the question is, am I free to leave? Right? If you're free to leave, feel free to take your possessions and your belongings and just calmly walk away. You don't even have to answer any other questions. Hold on, I just want to ask you one more question. Well, what are you doing around here? Do you live here? Yep. I'm out.
One partner of mine, a young kid who was an intern with me, was stopped by the police, and he asked the question, am I free to leave? And the police just didn't answer.
So if they don't answer, I would ask the question again, am I being detained? Okay. And I would continue to answer the question until I got an answer. Okay. Because if you're being detained, right, if they're detaining you, so at that point it becomes a de facto detention, effectively, right? So I don't want to get into the legal analysis of it, but like they are refusing to say whether you're detained, but you're also not free to leave, then you're de facto detained. So
I've seen situations. I'll shut up in just a moment. If other questions.
We had a question. Yeah.
Yes, I had a question regarding. Yes, I had a question regarding your database. Is this only for the Bay Area, California, or the whole United States?
So the database that we maintain is just for police in San Francisco. So that's SFPD, that's the sheriff, that's BART officers, that's CHP. There are also other databases in California. One just got launched recently by the CLEAN Network, which is the Committee for Law Enforcement Accountability Network, or something like that. We partner with them on how to build the databases and to maintain them and what the source. But yes, there are similar databases. The biggest issue, and that's a fantastic question, is not the existence of the databases, but how state law protects police officer records. So right now, only certain categories of police officer records are public. So sustained findings of dishonesty, sustained findings of sexual assault, and officer discharge at an individual, or shooting at an individual, and use of force that results in great bodily injury, and a couple of other sort of like illegal search and seizure categories. That's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the types of misconduct records that are out there. And so this is important for two reasons. First, it's important to know who, you all have a right to know who polices you. When and I think you mentioned this earlier, you said that the cop doesn't know who you are when they approach you. You should know who they are, right? I should know, was this officer so-and-so? Wait a minute, don't you have like 5 cases of excessive force on you? So what we try to do is we try to arm people with this information. Sorry if that was a terrible pun. We try to give people this information so they can protect themselves. I know that this officer in the Bayview always does illegal searches and seizures. Kids, stay away from him. Don't talk to him. He's not your friend. Don't do it, right? So that's the first issue. The second issue, and I'll give you an example of this. Some of you might have heard, like 2 years ago, there was an officer, SFPD officer, who was found to have been having an illicit affair with a confidential informant. And so the DA dismissed hundreds of cases because she was testifying in this, and the informant was testifying in this. It was very messy, and it's not to, love happens, can't control it. That's no good. So I mentioned all this kind of drama to really point out that an offense like that, having an affair with a confidential informant is a fireable offense. No one should be a cop if they're doing that, right? But, and we have a state process right now to decertify officers, which means they can't be off. They can't jurisdiction hop. They can't go from San Francisco to Berkeley, right? So our state organization declined to decertify her. And so the question I asked them is, under what circumstances would someone be decertified? If, that undermines the validity of hundreds. People spent time in state prison because of this, and they did not have the right to present that information in front of a jury and have a jury consider that. Would it have changed your vote if you knew that this officer was lying about having an affair with an undercover officer? Yeah, it impacts their credibility. And so all of our clients who didn't have that benefit, who sat days in state prison or in jail, right? Where's the justice for that? And so, to answer your question, yes, there are these databases, but the existence of the databases is one piece. What goes into them, that's the real fight. And that's kind of our big fight at the state level, is to make all police misconduct records public. But that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah.
Suppose so, even with all the techniques, so that cop's not.
Suppose I just didn't want to, because he was, he had no right to stop me. He had no right to start with, is this, where are you coming from? Right? You can't ask me that. Where am I going? You can't ask me that. Is this a stolen car? Just ridiculous, right? So suppose just, I just politely, officer, you're not supposed to ask me this. So there's a point where if I don't comply, because he wants to start something. So what do you do when you have a cop that wants to start something? He's illegal all the way. That's a hard question.
No, it's not. It's in fact a very easy question. I sigh because a lot of our cases begin this way, and I think the officer, and as I was listening to you talk about it, I don't think the officer had enough of a legal reason to actually stop you. I think what the officer had was this vague notion that a car was stolen. And so what he's doing is he's trying to justify the search to his superiors. Because when the superiors show up, like, why'd you stop what's the reason for the detention? Because he stopped your car. That is a detention. He has to have a legal basis to detain you because he's putting your constitutional rights on pause. And to meet that threshold, he has to have that basis. So he has to articulate to his supervisor what that basis is. And so he's probably going to say, we had this report about a stolen car and it matched the description. And it was probably a black guy, right? That's going to justify it. Well, not because, I think that, but because that's what will be enough to keep him out of trouble, right? He's got to have more than one piece of information, a stolen car that generally matches the description, and maybe you fit the description, right? So he doesn't have to tell you that because of the registration thing. So even under our current state law, and this is how sneaky it gets, right? Oh yeah, I stopped you because you put stickers over their stickers. So you can't do that. But what he's really thinking is, this is a stolen car and I want to investigate. So how am I going to trigger you to get it to escalate so I can now detain you, search you, and search the car? Because that's what I really want to do. And so when they ask you, what are you doing here? Where are you going? Right? You know what's implied in that? The word boy. And that's what our brains hear as black people, in particular black men. We hear that being treated as second-class citizen, making me guess, why do you think I detained you? Like, who asked that question, right? And so to me, it's an attempt to cover his you know what, right? Because he has to have that legal justification to stop you. But you absolutely played it perfectly. A lot of people in that situation, because they feel the pressure of that moment, they don't always respond with that. They don't always get into their breathing. They don't always grab something. And I wish they could have all heard this, because it was so instructive for me just to remind myself, you're about to go through some trauma, like you're about to go through some serious stuff. Take a second, acknowledge it, right? And realize that this is a game, this is chess. They're moving, I have to think about what my move is, right? Because if my goal is to make it home safely, if my goal is to beat my case or whatever the issue is, how can I best navigate that? So was there a lawful basis to detain you, technically? But what was the detention really about?
A white girl in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And
Sally from the Valley.
yeah, and so that's, you know, and I think it creates kind of like it's not just the harm that you experience, but the fact that this officer gets away with it because he gets to hide behind, oh, there was a sticker issue, or there was a stolen report of a stolen car, right? I can provide some veneer of non-racism, right? Because this is kind of like the circulator that I try to break routinely when I talk about these issues with police, is that you can't just say we go here because the crime's there, and that's why we police it, and that's why we find people, and that's what drives the cycle. Oh, the racial disparities are what they are because that's where the crime is, and that's where we go. I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had with SFPD commanders where that's the logic that they say to me. No, you're going there because you have this theory that's not tested by data. You just have a theory, and the theory is fueled by racism. Like, I don't know how else to say that, right? But yeah, so that was an interesting case. But as I was thinking through, I was like, yeah, I know exactly, because that's how I would cross-examine that person, right? That officer's on the stand, and I would ask the officer, was there a report of a stolen vehicle? Did it match a description? Now, the DA is going to try to object and say relevance, but I want the jury to hear this is about race. I want the jury to hear this is about pretext stop. And that's, again, why fighting your case with the public defender or any lawyer, but in San Francisco, our office, we have the best lawyers, is, I think, you know, the best strategy to navigate this. But thank you for the question.
I really appreciate your presentation. Just a couple of things. I'm really curious to learn, you know, if you have an accident and kill somebody in a car, it's mandatory for you to take a drug test. If the police pull out their weapon and discharge it, is it mandatory for them to take a drug test? And I heard Thomas lay out all these different scenarios of how police have been affected by whatever, but the drug thing wasn't in it with weed and coke and everything else. Are they tested? And if not, how can we make sure they do get tested in those situations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, you know, the framework to answer that question is because a drug test is a search under the Fourth Amendment, right? Submitting to a blood test is a search under the Fourth Amendment. And they have to have the legal basis to do it. In other words, they have to have, like, the reason to believe that you were impaired or under the influence. And they can't just make you do it because there's a crash, right? So they got to get up to the car and, like, do I smell alcohol? Do I see someone's eyes? Their pupils are dilated, or all the other signs of, you know, effectively a DUI. And so the same sort of rule applies to cops when they when they shoot and kill somebody. You know, they still have constitutional rights as well, but you're not wrong to point out that there is a gap in what you're not wrong to point out that there is a difference in how we treat citizens and how we treat police. And I think it's really, really clear in California, at least as far as I can tell, that police stand head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of the level of rights that they get, the level of protections that they get, and all the extra sort of bells and they're like super citizens. They get to wield weapons against people, hurt, maim, and kill them, incarcerate them, remove them from their families. And they get paid on top of it, sometimes overtime, sometimes the most expensive employees in the city. And as far as I can tell, we receive none of those protections. And in fact, many of the people in this room receive fewer rights, not on paper, but in practice, right? Because what's hidden behind that, what are you doing here? It's the boy, right? Tell me why I pulled you over, right? We're treated like second class citizens. So to answer your question kind of from like a 30,000 foot view, you know, it's in part because in California we treat police way better than we treat each other. And you can tell by the funding that we put into how we protect our most vulnerable. And so to me, you know, is there a way to change that? Absolutely. It's bringing this conversation to the state legislature, right? To open up police misconduct records, to add more laws that require officers to do more things when they conduct a traffic stop, to ensure that there are more protections, right? To find ways to de-escalate, so more people can go home after an interaction, because maybe not everybody has gone through the process of doing the yoga sort of breathing techniques, and they're triggered because this is now the 10th time in this year that they've been pulled over and searched, because that happens all the time. And so, to me, it really raises the question of, like, why are we continuing to invest resources in this institution when other institutions can protect us and keep us safe? It's my personal belief that police do very little to keep us safe. We keep each other safe. And that's been true in the Black community since day one. Yeah.
We have about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I just wondered if there were burning issues people wanted to ask or issues you wanted us
No, it's
to know
fine.
of.
I talk way too much, so thank you for keeping me on track.
Yeah. Well, my question is, I've been stopped,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked what he stopped me for, and he answers something. Then he asks if he can look in my car.
Mm-hmm.
No, first is, am I being detained?
Mm-hmm.
And he says no. So I'm leaving, but he thinks that I may have something on me,
Mm-hmm.
and he follows me home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can he do something to me or say something?
If you're not detained, you're as free as everybody else. You can walk around. He's also free to follow you. He is also free to put you under surveillance informally. He's also free to take a picture of your license plate, run it. He's also free to ask you, are you on probation or parole? He's also free to ask you, do you mind if I search your car, search you, or search your house? You are free to say no. Get a warrant.
Okay.
Because absent some exception, an officer has to have a warrant to enter your house, enter your car, or search you, right? And that's always been true. They have to have a warrant to draw your blood. In the case of like a DUI, they have to have a warrant to get into the house. Now, this is different in terms of if there's like exigent circumstances, which means like there's an emergency. I won't get into that, but the general rule is warrant. So if a cop comes knocking on your door, do you mind if I search your house? Do you have a warrant?
Oh, okay.
I won't use the language I would use in front of them, but I think you can guess what I would say. Yeah, but that's how I'd approach that.
Okay, so if he tells me that I'm not under arrest or anything and I go home, then 2 hours later there's on my door. What is he looking for?
If I'm guessing, he's identified the car as being a part of something. Mm-hmm. And then now he's identified the house, which is linked to the car. And now he wants to get in the house because the car is something, right? And so, again, if a cop knocks on my door, I'm not opening the door. I'm asking, do you have a warrant? And if there's not a warrant, I'd kindly ask you to get off of my property, because that's trespass. But that's me. I'm a lawyer. And I fight police on a daily basis, so not everybody has to take that perspective and be that. Well, maybe, but no. I think it's important to speak truth to power. I think it's important to walk into places to let them know that we are here, that we are watching, and that they don't, in fact, hold all the power. Anyway, but I appreciate you all listening to me ramble on a little bit, and happy to answer any final questions. Yeah.
Arturo, I just would like to know if the public defender's office has any volunteer internship availability. I'm a student right now, and I'm minoring in legal studies.
Yeah, I'm giving you my card. Email me, and I'll put you in touch with our director of training, who can get you to fill out a application, so we can get you in the internship pool. But yes, we do. We have plenty of them. Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't bring enough, but please, I can write my information down for folks.
You get it from me.
Yeah.
Solo.
I've got a couple of more.
Or have people take pictures of it.
Yeah, there you go. You can take pictures of it for those who
I have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of San Francisco's cop study, with the Department of Justice, when Obama was in,
Yeah.
and then the state took over. One of the findings was if the person being stopped was a person of color and the officer was a person of color, that if there were a physical incident, that they may be hurt worse than if it were a white officer. Does that make I haven't tried to figure out how to make that make sense.
What's the line from the song? Black cop showing off for the white cop.
That's what some people say.
Right. You know, I think it's hard because black officers in particular go through this kind of, you know, this sort of double consciousness thing, right? Where they have to be both black and a police officer. And you can see it on some of their faces occasionally how pained they are at having to do the work that they do. But being an officer is a choice. No one makes them do that. And, you know, the idea that somehow their race, their ethnicity, their gender, whatever, might shield them from some criticism, I don't think that it does. In fact, it, in a lot of ways, it makes it worse because you see the harm. Your family has likely experienced the harm. And I think when I talk to them, they always say, I'm this because either somebody in my family is or we had this experience and we want to keep each other safe. And then I challenge them on that. I challenge them, like, what does it mean to be safe, right? We are safe when we have what we need to thrive. That's where real safety comes in. And so I always try to redirect officers in terms of, like, they think a gun and a badge and a baton and handcuffs keep people safe. I think housing and healthcare keep people safe, and jobs keep people safe. So, long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
Maybe one. Another question by chance? Any parting words from you?
Just thank you for the privilege of being here and with you and sharing this space. I really, it's the reason why I do this work, because I was thinking about my son, and I was thinking about how when he grows up to interact, keep people safe. So, long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
Maybe one. Another question by chance? Any parting words from you?
Just thank you for the privilege of being here and with you and sharing this space. I really, it's the reason why I do this work, because I was thinking about my son, and I was thinking about how when he grows up to interact, keep people safe. So, long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
Maybe job than prosecutors do. So they do have their hands behind their back. And I kind of grew up under Jeff Adachi. I don't know if you were here when he was around. Okay. Oh, really? Wow. You fell asleep in the interview?
It was just too tired.
Oh, okay. So thank you very, very much. We greatly appreciate it. You added so richly to our event tonight. And I hope that each one of us will take what he said and sort of internalize it and use it to the best of our knowledge to be safe as we can, but understand the situation. All righty, let's have a great night. Thank you very, very much. Bye-bye.